be addressed.
Resuming debate. Please debate. The honourable member for Nanaimo, Ladysmith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Canadians hold deep pride in the men and women who wear the uniform of the Canadian Armed Forces. They serve in dangerous places with courage to defend the values and freedoms we hold dear. We ask them to put country before self, to risk their lives so that we can continue to live in safety and freedom. For far too long, too many of those who have served have had to fight another battle. The battle to be heard, to be believed, and to be treated with dignity when they come forward as victims of sexual assault or misconduct within the very institution that demands the highest standards of honor and integrity. That's why today's debate on Bill C-11, the government's new military justice reform bill, matters. Our conversation today is not just about amending sections of the National Defence Act. It's about the culture, credibility, and future of the Canadian Armed Forces. Because of the way that Bill C-11 now intersects with our criminal justice system, it is also about the way we prosecute crime in general in Canada. Mr. Speaker, it's been more than a decade since the 2015 report of former Supreme Court Justice Marie Deschamps. It's been more than a decade since that report rocked Canada with her findings on sexual misconduct in our armed forces. She made 10 recommendations. Operation Honour followed and was supposed to change both culture and outcomes. But years later, the Auditor General reported that Operation Honour had little measurable success. Investigations were still slow, accountability was still weak, and the culture in some parts of the military continued to allow perpetrators to avoid serious consequences. Justice Deschamps called the Liberal government out for its failure to act in this regard. The next report came in 2021. It was done by former Supreme Court of Canada Justice Maurice Fish. It gave the Liberal government another failing grade and made 107 recommendations. In 2022, another former Supreme Court of Canada Justice, Louise Arbour, delivered yet another comprehensive external review, this time with 48 recommendations, again emphasizing broken trust and again calling for action. 3 former Supreme Court of Canada justices laid out a roadmap for reform, and yet, as the Liberals hesitated, as progress stalled, as survivors were left waiting, it was Conservative pressure through parliamentary questions, committee hearings, and public advocacy that forced this issue back onto the national stage again and again. We can fairly say that without the sustained effort and without the tenacity of victims, that Bill C-66, which still died on the order paper when the Liberal government prorogued last time, and now Bill C-11 may never have been introduced. The Liberals will now claim credit for these reforms, but it is Conservative MPs who ensured that the voices of victims were not forgotten and that meaningful change could not be avoided. The fact that we are still here 10 years after the Deschamps report, debating the same issues, with the same victims still waiting for change, is a damning indictment of this Liberal government's ability to deliver results. Even with all of this to work with, Bill C-11 still includes some very strange inconsistencies. Term lengths and reappointment rules differ across positions. The Director of Military Prosecutions and the Director of Defense Counsel Services will serve 7-year terms with no reappointment. The Provost Marshal General, on the other hand, serves for 4 years and can be reappointed. There seemed to be no clear rationale for these differences. Similarly, giving the Minister of National Defense the power to issue prosecutorial guidelines in specific cases and giving the Governor and Council authority over appointments and removals, which is Cabinet, opens the door, intentionally or not, to political interference. The Minister's involvement in reviewing inquiries and authorizing acting appointments could compromise independence. And Bill C-11 does not fully clarify how offences outside of Canada will be handled. I hope that the Liberals will collaborate with us on these issues and other issues raised by my colleagues, and that they will be ironed out as the bill progresses through our parliamentary system. Beyond the wording of the bill, however, we cannot ignore the context in which this debate takes place. The government has promised to grow the Canadian Armed Forces to meet our NATO obligations. It has pledged to recruit and retain thousands of new members in the coming years. That will require trust, Mr. Speaker. Trust that every person who joins our forces will serve in an institution that protects them, upholds the law, and embodies the values that we defend abroad. And that brings me to a very serious concern. The government is proposing to transfer all sexual offense cases from the military justice systems to civilian courts. The principle makes sense. Justice must be independent. But modernization is not just a word. It's a commitment to follow through. It means resourcing reforms properly. It means ensuring civilian authorities are ready to handle the additional caseloads. Right now, Mr. Speaker, our civilian court system is in crisis. Court backlogs are staggering. Serious criminal cases have been stayed or dismissed because of delays. Victims of assault, including sexual assault, are waiting years for their day in court. So when this government says it will hand military cases to the civilian system, we have to ask, how will the civilian system cope? What additional resources will be provided to the provinces along with this downloading to ensure these cases and others do not end up stayed for delay? And while we are speaking about justice, Mr. Speaker, let us talk about the need to reform Liberal bail. Just this afternoon, this Liberal government voted down a Conservative private member's bill that would have tightened bail provisions for repeat violent offenders, including sexual offenses. People who, under this government's lax laws, have been released time and time again and have shown a staggering ability to reoffend. Liberals talk about protecting victims, but when they had the chance to take common sense steps to keep dangerous criminals off our streets, they said no to reform and yes to Liberal bail, which will apply to these cases under C-11 the same as it applies to other cases in our justice system. Canadians deserve a government that takes justice seriously. Our men and women in uniform deserve a military where justice is not only done, but is seen to be done and is done expeditiously. The integrity of our justice system, civilian and military, depends on consistency. You cannot claim to stand for victims in uniform if you turn your back on victims in our communities. You cannot say that you believe in accountability for the forces if you do not demand it in our courts. The government has to move beyond symbolism and performative legislation. It must demonstrate through action, Mr. Speaker, and results that it understands the gravity of the trust that it has broken and the responsibility it carries to restore it. If we fail to get this right, then we fail not only today's soldiers, sailors, and aviators, but also those we hope will serve tomorrow. Canada is vulnerable. Our allies are increasing their defense commitments. The global security environment is becoming more dangerous. We will ask more of our military in the years ahead. But leadership begins with integrity at home. Before we can ask our soldiers to defend Canada's values overseas, we must prove those values govern our own institutions. The rule of law, equality, and justice must not be words in a report, but living principles in every part of our justice system. For the sake of our soldiers, sailors, and aviators serving both in Canada and abroad, let's get it right. The time for excuses has long passed. Fix the criminal justice system or get out of the way and let us do it. Let us ensure that the civilian courts have the capacity to deliver justice quickly and fairly. Above all, let us commit, across party lines, that never again will the men and women who serve Canada have to wonder whether their own government will stand up for them when they need it most. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments? Question on commentary. The honourable member for Sudbury.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The member talked a lot about the Liberal government's track record when it came to supporting the defence and Canadian Armed Forces, and we know that the legislation that we're debating today is significant, as well as some of the investments that we've announced over the past few months. But I would be very interested to hear what the member would have to say on the fact that the lowest level of defence spending ever in the history of the Government of Canada was made under the Conservative Harper government.
The honourable member for Nanaimo, Ladysmith.
This bill is about the prosecution of serious criminal offences around sexual misconduct. This government has had 10 years and 6 months to bring this forward, and we need to get it right, and we need to work together to do that.
Comments? Question and commentary. L'honourable député.
The honourable member for Mirabel. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Once again, this is a bill that's promising and necessary, but we have to ask why it took 10 years to come up with this. The Liberals, basically, it took report after report from former Supreme Court justices, and then they had a bill they let die on the order paper. So they really seem not that interested in military justice on the other side of the House here. And the minister refused to meet with the ombudsman and was basically hiding in the washrooms to avoid meeting with the ombudsman to discuss this. So my question is, why, in her opinion, did the Liberals take 10 years? Why did they neglect this file so much when military justice is so important, once again, for the most vulnerable members of the armed forces? The honourable member for Nanaimo, Ladysmith.
For his question, I think he's raised a point that really needs to be addressed. We have gotten to a point on this file where the trust is so low that we need to move these kind of offenses into the criminal justice system. And I really can't help but wonder if we had acted faster, if this Liberal government had acted faster when they had 10 years to do it, if we could have gotten to a point where the members of our armed forces had the opportunity to work this out internally and be able to build that trust. In the meantime, we cannot go back. We can only move forward. And for as long as this is taken, we hope that this government will take our advice and continue to work on this bill. Thank you.
Comments, the honourable member for Provencher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the member from Nanaimo, Ladysmith, for an excellent speech. I think she clearly identifies some of the issues and concerns that she has with this legislation. Earlier today, we just saw the Liberals vote against tough on crime and instead support their soft on crime approach with voting against the jail and not bail motion that we as Conservatives put forward. The member identified that she doesn't necessarily have confidence in our courts that the victims of sexual violence and assault in the military will receive justice in our courts. And is that because of the Liberals' failure to pass legislation that's effective and actually brings justice to victims?
The honourable member for Nanaimo, Ladysmith.
I want to thank my colleague for his question. The problem is not as much with the courts as it is with the speed of justice that this government feels that they need to pursue. When it comes to the issue of liberal bail, we have been waiting for that. We have been waiting for this. We are waiting for a trade deal. We are waiting, we are waiting, we are waiting. And Mr. Speaker, Canadians are tired of waiting for this Liberal government. They use lots of nice words, but it is time to act, and it is time to move forward on so many files, including this one. Thank you.
Questions and comments? A very brief question, Honourable Député de Thérèse de Blainville.
The honourable member for Thérèse de Blainville. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my honourable colleague. I have a very brief question. Knowing that there's urgency, knowing how important this is for victims, are you ready to act swiftly to find solutions and get this bill passed? The honourable member for Nanaimo, Ladysmith.
We'll see what the amendments and what the process brings. Thank you so much, Mr.